We are talking about home births in 2025 versus hospital births in 2025.
The doctors are being paid per intervention.
Yeah.
They're paid for C-sections as surgeries, which they get paid way more than they do for natural births. So we already know that they literally have incentive to give interventions and to give surgeries.
Welcome to Grace and Reyna Ruin Everything.
I'm Grace.
I'm Reyna.
We're bringing you conversations you should be having with your best friend.
We cover everything from wellness to relationship woes to politics.
In a world that feels increasingly black and white, we bring in the nuance.
Expect honest dialogue as we explore what it means to be a human woman in her 30s in today's world.
Whether you're questioning the status quo, seeking deeper connections, or here for the unhinged tangents, you've come to the right place.
Come for the combo, stay for the vibes.
Welcome to Grace and Reyna Ruin Everything.
Okay, let's start with some rants and raves.
Rants and raves.
Our favorite segment of the week.
What's
Everyone's
yours?
favorite segment of the week. I have a rant that I was already ranting about before we got on because Grace and I, we just planned like right before the podcast. And so what I was saying is that I live with my boyfriend and we are sharing a bathroom. And when we lived together in Santa Monica, we weren't sharing a bathroom, but I'm like a big privacy person. Like I need privacy, or alone time, or just like leave me the alone time, leave me the fuck alone time. And he doesn't knock on any door ever. So like if I'm in the bathroom, the door's closed, he just walks in. And like even if I'm pooping, like if I'm pooping now, I lock it because he just walks in. And then he now will just like, if it's locked, he'll try to open it and he'll be like, "You locked the door?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, because you don't knock." I think that's just like, it's crazy. And sometimes I'm not even pooping. It's just like I'm trying to like, like get ready to have a moment, put on lotion, put on makeup. And I'll just like barge in and start peeing.
I do think the bathroom is a place that like should probably knock if the door's closed.
Right?
Like what kind of like is this like a serial killer trait or
Honestly, if you're at home and someone's in a room with the door closed and only two people live there, I think you should knock. Even if it's
Agreed.
not the bathroom, because we don't close any of our doors ever.
Yeah, if you want it closed, you're trying to like have a moment, probs.
Yeah, like maybe I'm crying into my hands. Anyways, do you have one?
I feel like I should give a rave after that to lighten our mood.
My mood's light. I already feel a lot better.
Okay, good. Well, my rave it's kind of a rant rave because I don't even know how I feel about it, but recently I've been like on TikTok a little bit. I never really was. I'm still not really. Don't find me on there. I'm not like doing things, but Reyna's on there and our podcast is. And
We're not really on there either. We're just on there like for funsies.
for fun.
We're just like rooting around.
Okay, but
fun.
I had never known when people
She's like brand new. She wasn't even like looking. Sorry, I'm trying to.
No, that's what I mean. So for example, I accidentally ended up somewhere that I had never been in TikTok, and I was like, how did I even get here? And it was where people were doing lives, where they were like doing lives and then people are interacting with it, but it was like the randomest shit I had ever seen in my life. I like my mind was like I was like, where am I? Because it went from like one woman writing in like sand people's names. They were like putting in names and then she'd be like Rebecca and then like erase it with a little rake and then write other people's.
I
You
know
know
what
what I'm
you're
talking
talking
about? And I was like, what am I watching? But then next you'd like flip it and then it was like, here's somebody selling nail polish. Like, look at the tutorial. And then you flip it and they're like, somebody's selling wigs. And then they're like, I'm like, where am I? Like, what is going on?
Yeah, you accidentally like swiped like
I
right
swiped
or
to the
left.
wrong place. I don't know where I was.
You were in the live section.
Live. And then it was like, is it shops? Is it live? There was a lot going on. It was very confusing, but also entertaining. It was kind of like, when you like watch reality TV and you like hate watch it and you're kind of like, this is like, I don't like it, but I want to keep watching it or something. It was like that where I was like so enthralled. I ended up on this live with this guy. Actually, this was really sad. I ended up listening to this guy who was talking about how he started his TikTok because the government shut down, so he can't work, so he has no money, and he was, like, trying to pay for his family, and then I was like, "Oh my god." I was, like, fully enthralled, and then he was like, "You know, sometimes you just, like, need money for groceries." Like, I didn't have $100 for groceries, and then I don't know if this was, like, fucked up of me, but I everybody was messaging and sending him roses and stuff and, like,
I think
things.
you get money for that.
I don't know what any of that is,
Yeah.
and so I was like, "He seems like he needs real money," so I message, I go, "If you send me your Venmo, I'll send you $100 for groceries," and then he literally was like, "Oh my god, no, wait." He's like, "That's so kind, but no, I would never could never accept a handout like that, but go to my TikTok shop and buy something." And
Because
I
'Cause he'll
was
get
like,
reimbursed. Okay,
"Yo, no, they get paid for
no,
the
I
TikTok
know,
shop."
but okay, this just brings up something. I won't get too far deep in it because I think about this all the time, and this is, like, not what the podcast is about, but, like, the idea that you won't accept handouts is such great marketing by the fucking United States government or whoever was has been in power for, like, 200 years. It's insane. Like,
I mean, I thought
I
it was wild that he was literally saying, like, "I need money. I'm starting this shop to, like, have money." And then I was like, "I'll give you, money." Like, I'm bought in. I'm like, "Sure, whatever. Great. Like, I could just help you right now." And then he was like, "No."
No, I know, because there's this whole idea that if you do, you're somehow bad, and this way he's, like, earning it, working for it, but it's like,
I
my
bought
mom, when
something from his TikTok shop.
she's
I
always been
bought
proud that she's, like, never been on food stamps or SNAP, and I'm like, "Why? We probably needed it, and then you could spend that money on something else."
Well, I think this is good to let people know, probably not our listeners, but, like, right-wing people who think that these, like, handout programs are just people, like, abusing the I handout, I mean, like, food stamps and stuff are like, "Oh, just abusing the system and blah, 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 blah," and it's like, no, people, like, a lot of people don't even want to be on those and won't even be on them even if they could,
Yeah. Oh, and
so they're
also just
probably not being
FYI,
abused.
uh Grace did quotes around handout, earlier, since I'm done realizing some people will see this, but, like, some people will just be listening on their walk and be like, Grace called them handout programs. No, it was quote, unquote, "handout
I'm
programs."
saying the word because you said the word. Anyway, TikTok Live is a whole new world. It's like a fucking I felt like I was in the wild, wild west, and I was like, "Is this what people do?" Like, and that's not even the half of it. There were so many other things, but I digress. Let's get into some real.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so we thought of this episode, like, earlier this week. We were actually supposed to record on Monday, and I was like, "I don't feel like it because 'cause I've been really busy, and I just want to lay around and play on my farm." But which is doing well, by the way. You haven't asked, but, I noticed that you didn't ask, but it is doing great. Um, anyways, so I don't know how we came on this topic actually, but I'm really excited to talk about it. It doesn't really have much to do with me, but I think it has a lot to do with women, and I think most of the listeners are women.
Yes, that's true from what we know so far. But also guys that are here, thanks. That's cool. I said that everybody really liked our sex episode the most, and I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
what's other topics we could talk about around that? And for some reason, I was like, maybe if they like sex, maybe they'll like us talking about birth, which
Yeah, sex is step
may or
1.
may not be true.
Yeah. We'll take a poll after this. Is sex like birth?
Is this like what you guys were wanting more of? We'll see. Um, so I do think it's an interesting topic for women because something Reyna mentioned, which is true, is like for a lot of women, we don't know much about birth until we are pregnant and about to go through it. And then we're suddenly supposed to like learn all there is to about this whole like birthing process and world that is giving birth. And I think it's something that probably historically women were more exposed to, or I imagine that they
Yeah.
were, or that they were taught about more, or that there was like some more connection with, that's greater than what we have today. Today, I think it's very much like you see on a movie a woman's water breaking and then she's screaming and then they go to the hospital and then she's screaming and then a baby comes out and like that's all we know about it and then until you're actually pregnant you don't really know more. And then I think for women that like don't have kids yet, I don't know if they'll find this interesting, or women that have had kids, maybe you'll find it interesting.
Grace has 2 kids. Obviously, I haven't given birth at all before. I have been to 1 birth, which was Grace's, and Grace did 2 home births.
Well,
And I
not
think
my birth, the birth of my daughter.
oh, yeah.
It would be cool if you were at my
I
birth.
was probably at her birth in spirit, like, in soul. Oh, wait, no, I was already born, so I was alive. Maybe you were at mine. Anyways, so, yeah, the birth of Grace's 2nd daughter I was at, and I was supposed to be at the 1st one, but I couldn't go. It was a long story. Um, but why don't you take us through a little bit about, like, why you chose home birth?
Yeah, so I chose home birth for my daughters because I don't know what first kicked off this idea, but I do remember seeing the documentary The Business of Being Born, and it's really hard to find that documentary because it's been shadow banned, which
Oh, great.
I think is actually proof of how important it is for women to watch. Anything that's being shadow banned, you know there's some interesting information in there. But it was made by, like, Ricky Lake.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because she had, like, a really traumatic experience in the hospital, and then she wanted to, um, like, research what the fuck is going on with the hospital birth system. I think that was the impetus for it. And then she was pregnant again, and then or maybe it was her friend had a traumatic hospital birth. It was her and her friend. One of them had given birth in the hospital and, like, it didn't go well, and then so they were both gonna do home births. Um, anyway, so in this documentary, they kind of unravel the fact that in the US, if you go into a hospital when you are going to give birth, they start to give you these minor interventions that kind of the theory of the movie is that these interventions end up cascading one to the next and end up actually diverting you from the natural birth process
Yeah.
to basically requiring you at some point to need a C-section. And I'm not saying that some women don't really need C-sections, but the point they're making is that if you go into a hospital, you're far more likely to have a C-section, whether or not it's necessary. And maybe it's made necessary by some of the earlier interventions that they're taking. So this to me just like made sense because I don't trust our medical system, the hospital system, um, which I could talk more about why, but I think there's like a lot that has to do with um, just trying to operate hospitals like businesses. The doctors are being paid per intervention.
Yeah.
They're paid for C-sections as surgeries, which they get paid way more than they do for natural births. So we already know that they literally have incentive to give interventions and to give surgeries. Also, doctors are literally taught in school how to deal with like the problems that can come up with in birth, and they're not really taught about the natural birth process and helping it out, just allowing it to happen.
Yeah. Well, um, I also wanna say, like, at least from my own personal experience about going to the doctor, is that a lot of your medical care and your treatment isn't determined by your doctor, it's determined by your insurance company. And so, like and that is probably part of the basis of how hospitals are run and how you can best mitigate risk is by maybe doing all these interventions and then, um and that's, like, not necessarily that's in the best case for the mother or the baby or whatever, but they're doing all of them to kind of make sure that when they look back at the statistics of the hospital that everything can be predictable, right? Like, I think one thing about birth that is different, especially than other medical interventions or anything like that or whatever, is that you can't schedule it. I think that
Well,
actually has a lot to do with how or why it's managed the way that it is.
I mean, now they are changing it so they can schedule it by scheduling
Yeah.
C-sections just for like literally half the a good amount of C-sections I hear about are scheduled, and the reasons for the medical needs seem pretty shoddy to me. It seems like they are scheduled for convenience, so it can be scheduled so that
Yeah,
they
and
know when the
sometimes
baby's coming.
yeah, and I wanna also, like, make clear, I don't think you mentioned it. If you did, I missed it because I was looking at notes. But, home birth is not an option for everybody, right? Like, I think you've told me that you can only have a home birth if you already meet some certain, like, qualifications. So can you talk a
Yeah.
little about that? Because I want to also make clear that, like, home birth cannot be an option for everybody, and maybe 100 years ago, it was the only option for everybody, but now we do have modern medicine and hospitals, and there are cases where that is, you know, preferred or necessary or recommended. So, like, what's the deal there?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so well, hold on. Wait, first I just wanna say that
We're not doctors.
I'm not a doctor.
Excuse me, I
Also,
have a bachelor's in neuroscience, alright? I'm closer than a lot of other people.
I mean, we were both pre-med, so
Yeah.
we're
Well, only for, like, a
basically
semester, but I found out quickly I don't have the
pre-meders.
discipline. I love to party.
Well, I did a full pre-med as a biomedical engineer, so I am a pre-doctor, okay? I'm a pre-doctor. But no, I think just like me as a person, I'm a little bit crunchy and I just liked the idea of like believing that this is a natural process that our bodies can do. And I'm not saying it always 100% goes without any complications, but I'm saying that I do believe that a healthy woman of childbearing age, like, it should be more than likely that she can have a natural birth without complications, and the complications should be um, the exception, right? They
Yeah,
shouldn't be the rule.
yeah,
And I think one thing that people miss because when I started looking at options, I was like, "Okay, I don't really know that, like, the traditional birth is my jam." I also looked at working with midwives in a hospital, which is kind of like an in-between that some
yeah,
people do. I ultimately felt like even that felt a little too clinical for me. I didn't really connect with the midwives there. It felt very like you're still in, like, a hospital room and, like, it's just very transactional. Um, but I ultimately ended up working with these midwives that do home water births. It is outside of insurance, so you have to pay for it out of pocket. They do have um, insurance negotiators that you can hire to try to get some money from insurance. So
yeah,
ultimately, we paid $7,000 for the full midwifery care from prenatal through postnatal. And then I think we got back from insurance like 2,500.
yeah,
So it maybe cost a few $1,000s, which I've talked to many women who say their hospital bills were that much or more
yeah.
after insurance. So look, some more out of pocket perhaps, but for women that can afford it, it's an option. But it is not available if you are deemed a high risk pregnancy. The midwives in California, at least, are not allowed to give birth at home for a high risk pregnancy. So high risk might be things like, um, well, what is high risk? What does make you high?
Age, probably, weight, probably
Yeah, like
comorbidities, I'm not
pre-existing,
sure,
yes,
yeah,
yes, like pre-existing health conditions and or health conditions that develop during pregnancy. Um, So
and probably
so
some situational stuff that could happen, yeah, like the breach, we talked about babies
oh,
being
yes,
breached.
twins are
Mhm.
considered high risk, so the midwives can't deliver twins at home. There's one doctor who delivers twins at home in, like, all of California, and he shared offices with my midwives. So he's an OB,
Oh, that's
um,
cool.
Dr. Stewart,
Wait,
Dr.
more OBs
Stewart.
should do that, that's crazy.
He's cool, he's cool. Check him out online. He has, like, a whole, like, social media and whatever. Maybe he's the one we should
Oh, yeah,
interview.
we should invite I really want to invite, like, sorry, this is interrupting our episode, but we thought about how Grace is gonna talk about this, but we thought it would be really important to have also an actual doctor come on and talk about this, so we aren't spreading mis and disinformation, which we're kinda loosey goosey with stuff around here 'cause, whatever.
So
But
if you know any doctors that we
yeah,
should talk to, and
we'd
or
love to have
even
them
those
on.
that are more like
Traditional.
traditional that can talk about why they do things the way they do in the
Yeah,
hospital, like we're
that would be great.
open to all sides of this. But Dr. Stu would be cool too. Um, so anyway, and if your baby is breech, they the midwives do have techniques to turn breech babies, and they actually do have training to birth breech babies, but I believe if you were, like, in for an ultrasound and your baby was breech, they would, like, need to confirm that it flipped before you go into that birth
Yeah,
based off the law, I believe.
yeah,
Um, okay, so all of that to say there's obviously many factors here, but let's say you have a healthy pregnancy so far. You're a healthy woman. I think that women should be empowered to believe and try for and be empowered to have a natural unmedicated birth should they choose. And look, if you don't care about that and you're just like, "Give me the epidural, give
Some
me the
people
C-section,"
I think some
then
people feel more
great.
comfortable in the hospital because they're in the hospital and that like that those people exist, you know?
Well, definitely, I would say if it was a question of how do you decide if you should have a home birth or not, I think that the only factor there is where do you feel most comfortable and
Right.
safe?
Yeah.
Do you feel comfortable and safe in your own home? Do you feel comfortable and safe in the hospital? Like women, I've had this conversation with women telling them about my experience, and they're like, "Oh my God, if I was giving birth, I would be so anxious. I would be so stressed. If I wasn't in the hospital in case something
Yeah.
happened, I would be
Exactly.
so stressed." Then, yeah, you should absolutely give birth in a hospital because and this is for the reason that the natural birth process, it's about relaxing into the process of birth. Your body is literally opening up, your cervix is opening. And in order to do that, you need to get into this state where you're comfortable. They talk a lot. Oh, Reyna, you've actually read part of this book. Ina May
Oh, yeah, I
Gaskin.
did. It was
I may-
pretty weird, guys. I was supposed to go to Grace's first birth. Okay, her first kid's birth, whatever. You guys know what I'm fucking talking about. Anyways, I was supposed to go, but she wouldn't let me go unless I read this book, at least the first part of it. And it had like, it's a collection of birth stories all at, they're not all at home. They're all like some weird, really hippy dippy place. There
on
was
the
a free birther
farm.
in there. There was a free
On the
birther in there.
farm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, on a farm, yeah. It was really weird, but it was pretty cool. I also have given it to other people I know that have had babies because I tell them it's what Grace told me. Sorry, I'm Grace, I'm, like, stealing her part, but, um, it's, like, one of the sources of information of birth that isn't scary.
Yeah. I loved those birth stories, and that's why I wanted you to read them because I felt like we learn a lot of like, they tell you a lot of, like, logical things of what you need to think about during labor, and they're like, 411 and da and you're, like, trying to, like, understand, and what I actually felt like was the most helpful when I was actually in labor was the stories told by the actual women about their actual experience of labor, because it's not really about how quick your contractions are or blah, 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 like these stats. It was like them talking about the process and where they were at mentally and what they were experiencing. That was what I was able to connect to when I was in the middle of labor myself, and, like, to get to certain points where it was like I got to the point with Evie, I think, where I was, like, really starting to, like, not feel okay, like, I thought I was gonna pass out, I thought I was gonna throw up, I thought something was wrong. I told Ryan, I was like, "Oh my god, if we need to go to the hospital, like, we should just go." And he was like, "Are you okay? I'm gonna call the midwife." And he, like, called our midwife, she came over, she checked me. Also, mind you, she checks me and she goes, you better lay down." She checks me again, and then she
She's like,
goes,
Babe,
"Ok."
babe, come here."
And then she's like, "Hey, here's the deal. You're 10 centimeters dilated. This baby's coming now. We have to set up the tub. You're having a baby." It was the best news ever. And she told me after that she was like, "Yeah, well, the first heart rate, baby's heart rate that I took, the heart rate was really low." And she goes, "It's actually not a problem. It happens a lot in like intense contractions, especially at transition." And she goes, "So I wanted you to lay down and take the other reading." Um, and when you're in transition, it's like the worst part of labor, but it also means that you're like almost there. So a lot of times women feel like they're like, "No, I'm really gonna give up now." And it's like that just is proof that like you're almost there.
Yeah,
And I remember like being able to hear like have the stories to fall back on to feel like, okay, maybe I can trust myself. Maybe I can trust my body. In that case, I had a midwife who I trusted, and she was going to make sure that nothing we were doing was unsafe, or if anything,
yeah,
like she took that one reading of the heart rate, it was low, and then she checked again, it was back to normal. This is just like a specific example, but for example, in hospitals, they do continuous fetal heart rate monitoring the entire time you're in there. You check in, and they basically want to put the monitor on you right away. This is an intervention that has been shown in the data to not result in better outcomes. It doesn't. They think if we are monitoring the heart rate every moment. We will know exactly what's going on. What it actually causes is false alarms of fear of the baby heart rate dropping. Da da da. This is a natural part of labor, and then they've actually done studies with continuous heart rate monitoring and not. Those without continuous heart rate monitoring are having better outcomes than those with. So it's like it's not always helpful information,
Yeah,
right? Because it can be scary to hear the baby's heart rate's down,
you're right.
right? And I was scared in that instant when she was kind of like took the reading and then goes, you better lay down," and then took it again, but then it had returned. And she goes, "Well, that just must have been a really powerful contraction. You and the baby are going through this intense process. However hard it is for labor for the mom, it's that hard for the little baby.
Yeah, where
Their
you're squeezing down on her.
yeah, their head's getting squeezed through a canal, like, it's intense. So, like, yeah, they're also gonna be going through some stuff, but it doesn't mean that they're in danger, necessarily or that they're in distress. There are other signs where you can tell that they are, at which point you would wanna transfer to a hospital. Um, I'm kinda going off on a tangent, but I do wanna just say while I think of it, I think the other thing that people don't realize in making decisions about like your kind of ideal birth plan, what you want to attempt to do, where you want to hopefully have your birth is like if you choose to have a home birth,
Yeah.
quote unquote, if you choose to have a home birth, if you want to have a home birth, that actually is just your plan A. It's just saying that
Yeah.
if all goes well, if I'm healthy, if the baby's healthy, if everything's progressing, we will stay at home and try to do this at home. There's never nobody it's not even a question that if there was any cause for concern that came up at any point, that you wouldn't transfer to a hospital.
Right, and
Like,
you have a hospital designated and an OB designated, right, just in
yeah,
case at the hospital that you would go to if that even if it happens, like, day of and you have to be transported via ambulance or whatever, I don't know how they do it, but
yeah,
there are, like,
my
rules with that too, or I'm not really sure, tell me about that.
well, so, like, my midwives, for example, they that's, like, part of the planning we talked about. So, we obviously have our plan A, and then, like, we have plan B and plan C, and it was like, "Okay, if we did need to transfer, where would we transfer? What's the closest hospital? Where would you feel comfortable?" And we looked at geographically, which are closer. They had like, a smaller hospital with an OB that they really like, that they're like, "This OB, if we have to" this is what they came up with. We had plan B was, if we have to transfer, but we still aren't really worried, like, it's not like a time sensitive thing,
Yeah.
because this is what people don't understand. Even the transfers to hospitals, like, most of the time, it's not like, "Ambulance, the baby and mom are gonna die in 2 minutes if you don't get there." Okay, that has happened and that can happen in rare instances, but a lot of times these transfers are like, "Oh, we've been laboring for 35 hours
Yeah,
and the mom is, like, really weak and the baby's
right,
starting to
yeah.
be weak," or, "Oh, we have, like, mucoid" what is it called? Not mucoid plaque. Wait, what is it called? Um, the first baby poop, and when it happens and it means that they're, like, in distress, what is
I
that
don't know.
called? Oh, this is where I really wanna
Black
fact.
poop?
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
Oh my
that
god, I
stuff's
gotta look it up
gross.
now. Um, muconium. I'm mixing it with
Oh, if they see
GI
that, then you need to go to
cleanses.
the hospital too?
Yeah, so, like, if meconium was coming out, that would be a sign to transfer you to the hospital. So there's kind of this, like, non-urgent transfer, and they were like so it was plan B, non-urgent transfer, we'd go to this cutesy little hospital with a nice little OB where it's very small and nice, and plan C was like, if we're under the gun and there's like a time
Yeah,
constraint, we will go to the closest, which in that case, I was in Topanga. The closest was like Tarzana. And so, like, all of this is laid out. So there's no question, like, if there's a need, if there's an emergency, if somebody's not doing well, we will still end up in the hospital. We could still have a C-section. We could
yeah.
still do all these things. So I think like that's something that people don't realize. They're like, yeah. Anyway, I'll
No, I
pause.
mean, I think that's good to point out because I think that is a piece that a lot of people don't understand. And I do think a little bit about deciding what you want to do has to do with knowing yourself and knowing what your risk tolerance is. There is a risk to birth. Like just because you give birth in the hospital also doesn't mean you're not going to die. There is that woman in LA who's I know this because she's black and black women like die in the hospital during birth like 2 to 6 times more than white women. I don't know if they're comparing it just to white women, but that's my assumption. And so sometimes or I've seen like pushes for more um like home births or like birthing spaces that are not in the hospital for women of color for that reason or for black women specifically. But this woman did give birth in the hospital. I think it was at I'm not gonna name it. Anyways,
A
get d
large
it
major
was in a
hospital in
large,
LA.
major hospital, nationally renowned
Mhm.
hospital. You can Google it, because she died after a C-section and bled out, and her husband was, like, screaming and yelling in the hallway trying to get her medical attention, and it never came, and she died, like, she slowly, like, bled to death for, like, 10 hours or something like that. And it's a really popular case because he went and testified, in front of the Senate, I think, to get attention onto what happened to him and his family because it was in that day, they had, their 2nd kid, I think it was, and then they lost their mom. So, I think that, you know, there is, like, a lot of security in hospitals, but sometimes that's not necessarily the best place to be, and I know for me personally, I don't have kids and I'm, leaning towards not having them, but I don't think that I would feel comfortable at a hospital, um, just knowing that they have worse health outcomes.
Yeah,
And I would be not as able to advocate for myself. Like, I'm a really strong advocate of myself, but you would have to have someone doing that for you, and it's hard to trust that.
yeah, I think I mean, it is true that women of color have worse health outcomes in birth and in general, so that's absolutely a fact. And then I think there was data, I remember at least the data that was most recent when I was going into my first birth potentially, was that actually mothers' outcomes overall were worse in the hospital. Like, just more women were dying in the hospital from birth than at home from birth.
Yeah.
From a if you're planning to have a home birth. That was the data at the time, and
Wait, but I will say this, I wanna say this, this is a problem with data. If you're about to die in a home birth, you're gonna go to the hospital.
true, true.
So
But I
there
mean,
needs to be a little bit of separation. Like
if they don't right, but then if they don't die, if they can be transferred to the hospital and then they don't die, what do you mean? There's still that's still then a better outcome.
no, I know, what I'm saying is that, like, when we read data about this, you have to be careful because the deaths will all be in the hospital because most people, when they're about to die, will not keep giving birth at home. They're gonna transport to the hospital, and now they're a death at the hospital. So, like,
I see, I see.
when we think about the
Well,
data
I
of
don't
this, you
know
need
if
to be critical
yes,
of
okay.
how it's measured. That's
Well, we
just
should
like,
look up
you
if
know,
they're looking at home
birth
births that start as home births.
yeah, with the
I don't know.
intent of
Yes.
home birth.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think you'd have to dig into it because, I mean,
Well,
I'd be interested to know.
you know,
I'd be very interested to know.
the
Yeah.
other problem with the data is that anytime like I hate when people are like, well, what does the data say? What does the evidence say? Because I think it's one thing that a lot of people like glaze over and that I know only as having a lot of the like my background being in like working in pharma and biotech for years and then doing like a master's in academia and like actually having like a good amount of like um, published research has been like a present part of my life. And I don't know if people realize that like research is always funded by somebody and research on its own doesn't just make it like um not slanted. You know, like just like how
Yeah.
journalism can be slanted if it's
Journalism
like
is slanted because people write it, but
yeah, so if
eh
there's like a
yeah.
left-leaning press source, then you're gonna read the story and be like, "Yeah, this is leaning left." And if there's a right-leaning press source, right? Research works the same way, and people like to think that science is some, like, gold standard thing, but today it is not. I don't know if it used to be, but, like, I'm sorry to tell you all, but large institutions pay for research to be done, and when we talk about this idea of peer review, like articles needing to be peer reviewed to then be allowed in these journals and what there is establishment choosing what what studies are going to be promoted and which aren't. So like hospital systems pay for studies. They have a lot more money than small midwifery collectives. So like
Yeah.
this is one problem with data. I mean, you can read studies, there's studies like, funded by Coca-Cola on why sugar is actually good for us and whatever you know what I mean? Like, you can't like, you can't even fully say that, like, just because there's studies showing this or that, that it's not there's not, motivations there.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely get what you're saying. I think that even when you look into the history about midwifery and hospitals, I listen, I have no source on this, but I've read it before. But it was like 200 years ago, 150 years ago, all births were done by midwives. It was just how it was. And then I think what I read was that like the surgeons, which were men, they were always men, wanted in on that action. And so they kind of took it away from midwives. I don't know what they did. Maybe the midwives are witches. I don't know. I don't remember how that happened. But then I remember what happened in this story, which is going off topic, but I think it's really interesting, is that all the babies born in the hospitals were dying, and none of the ones born to the midwives were, because the doctors were also doing autopsies and they weren't washing their hands and they didn't know about germs yet. Crazy, huh?
This doesn't surprise me. Uh, the beginnings of birth of women birthing in hospitals was, like, terrifying. They used
Yeah.
to, like, strap them down to beds and, like, give them these medicines that would just have them, like, hallucinating and shit. It's actually really dark. The reason why sorry, we're gonna go a little dark. Sorry to ruin hospital birth for you women. Hope there's no pregnant women preparing for
I
their
hope there's
hospital
no
births.
pregnant woman from 1872 listening to the podcast as we're about to ruin her day.
But, like, the reason why we see women giving birth on their back in, like, a hospital gurney is because it was to allow it to be easy for the physician, for the surgeon to, be sitting on his little stool and have her, vagina right at his eye level. That is not the optimal or
Yeah,
the
I
only
was gonna bring this
position
up earlier, but I forgot.
for women.
Yeah.
Women, I get both I actually sorry, my second daughter, I did deliver her on my back. I was only on my back at the very, very, very end, pushing because I
I
was
was
ready to
there.
deliver her. But, like, if I would have been laying on my back for, like, 10 hours, I would have, like, killed myself. Sorry, maybe I shouldn't say that.
I
I each
also wanna say this, Grace called me before the birth and was like, "Hey, you should come over, like, it's gonna happen," or whatever, I don't remember what you said. And I came over, and she was baking cupcakes. I'm like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "Well, it's a birthday. It's a birthday party." And I'm like, "Shouldn't you be shouldn't we be boiling water and boiling sheets? Like, what are we doing here?"
I know it was gonna happen that night, but I was still in, like, early enough labor, and you just try to distract yourself at the beginning. So if you don't go to the hospital right away, then you get to just, like, hang out, make cupcakes for your baby, whatever. They also say, like so there's really good positions, like my first daughter, I was on my hands and knees, and I birthed her I actually delivered her
A doggy
talk
style?
about free birth. Yeah. No, well, my midwives loved it because that I was just it was just, like, happening, and, like, I caught her myself,
Mm, that's cool.
which is cool, and I was on my hands and knees because that just, like, felt right, like, it was just you gotta kinda just, like, move with your body, and there's different positions and stuff, but it's actually more about, like,
Were you in the
moving
water?
positions. Yeah, I was. For both, I actually did end up in the water at the end for the delivery part. That doesn't always happen. A lot of people at home just, like, give birth in their bed or, like,
Yeah,
whatever,
wherever
it
they
doesn't
want.
matter. Um, but what I was gonna say was that what was I gonna say? Um,
Your birth,
uh,
that you're on all fours.
well, no, but
You
just
caught
that but
her.
being on your back isn't
Oh.
necessarily the best. It's not the best for having the baby in the optimal position. If you were laying on your back the whole time, they can, like, flip, so they're the wrong direction.
Mm.
Um, like, not facing the right way. Not breech, but, like, you want their ideally, you want their back in your front,
Yeah, 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 that's what I see
right?
on TV.
And if you are laying on your back too much in general, like, even just while you're pregnant, you're not supposed to, like, lay on your back, and you're not supposed to, like, sit back a lot because
I
they'll
just thought
flip.
it's because 'cause you'd be crushed by that huge baby on you.
No, but the baby will flip and be, like, sunny side up or whatever, which means their face is facing
Uh,
you, and
yeah.
that's not ideal for birth. And the midwives know all of this. Like, if you have midwives, they do crazy things. Rena, you were there, my second one, I was like, "Is there anything we can do to speed this up?" And instead of giving me Pitocin, she did that crazy belly
Oh, yeah,
massage
that was your
thing.
doula.
No, she's a midwife.
Oh, that was your midwife?
She was an assistant,
Oh.
so basically my 2 midwives, one of them was sick or something, and then so they had their they have, like, a backup
Oh,
helper,
I see.
but
She
she's a
also told her, like, "You gotta stop hanging out and chit-chatting around."
well, you go through phases, so at first you
Yeah.
wanna hang out and chit chat and, like, not, 'cause, like, it
Not
can take a
release, not
long
go into
time.
it, yeah. Yeah,
So
I
if
was
you
there for, like, 5 hours, I think.
Yeah, and then so, like, at the point I was baking cupcakes, I still could, and then it got to a point where I was like, "I can't really, like, do anything else," and then it got to a point where I was still trying to distract myself, and then she's like, "If you want it to go faster, you should stop
Yeah.
distracting yourself."
There were
But that's,
probably,
like,
like
later. That's, like,
yeah, that was
later.
probably, like, a couple of hours where we were, like, watching TV, telling jokes, and you were I don't know what you were doing, you're by yourself.
I was in my room for most of it,
Yeah.
just
And then it was like,
eating.
"Get in here." And now side note, they ran out of hot water, and we did have to boil water, just like in the movies. They're like, "Boil
Ironically
the water." We were all filling up pots and pans, remember that? We're all filling up pots and pans and dumping them into the tub.
well, the really funny thing is that that actually happened the first time, and so then the second time, Ryan was like, "I got this. I know what happened last time. I'm gonna prevent it from happening this time." And then, like, somebody else was, like, filling the tub, and they didn't know whatever he thinks he figured out, and then, like, apparently they messed it up. So then we're back to square one of running out of hot water.
Yeah, okay, he didn't fix it, but, um, then you had the birth, and that seemed I'm not gonna not to, like, underplay your experience, but it didn't seem that hard. Like, not that
It
not to
was
be like
really hard mentally,
yeah,
like,
I'm sure.
you're going through this own experience on the inside where you, like, don't really feel like, it's almost like a psychedelic journey or something
Yeah,
where you just have to kinda, like you're, like, reminding yourself, you're like, "I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be okay. Like, we're gonna get through this," but, like, you don't nothing about your body feels okay in the very, very end, like, the end of it, you
yeah,
know? And you're just like, you feel so out of control because truly, like, your body is doing things, and the point like, what we're meant to do, or what you can do if you wanna do it naturally, is you have to surrender over to what your
yeah,
body knows how to do, and you actually have to let go and surrender into that feeling of being out of control, and it's like riding the waves of the contractions and whatever, and just, like, trusting. It's this, like, sense of trust in, like, yourself, your body,
yeah,
the universe, women, and it is really wild, but it can be a lot more, like, sacred and meaningful and calm than I think, like, that Hollywood style movie where they show the woman just screaming bloody murder and like,
yeah.
"You did this to me,"
No,
to the
there was
husband.
no screaming, and it was, like, low lighting,
Yeah.
and me and your sisters were there,
Yeah.
and the midwives, obviously,
Well, I
and
wanted to be at home because I don't like, hospitals, like, freak me out, like, I don't
yeah,
feel I mean, we talked about this earlier, but, like, for me, hospitals, like, the sterile environment and whatever, like, nothing about it is, like, cozy to me, and but, like, my home is, like my little cave, and you just put on vibey music and turn on the lights, and it's like, um, they talk about I was gonna say this before, so Ina May Gaskin, she talks about the fact that the birth process remember I don't know if you read the rest of the book, but she has this rule, this sphincter rule, that your cervix acts like it is a sphincter. So, what's a sphincter? Like, your butthole? You know how
yeah, your bladder has 2 sphincters too, it's not
Yes.
yeah.
So, you know how if, like, let's say you're pooping and let's say Alex walks in
Hey,
without
hey.
knocking, and then maybe, like, your sphincter closes up because 'cause you're like, what?" And then he leaves, and then you're still kinda, like takes a second to, like, relax back, maybe.
This
I don't
happens
know if
when
that
I
happens to
pee.
you. Right.
No, okay, I'm a really good at holding my pee, I'm so good that if I sometimes be like, "Can you remind me that I have to pee?"
Yeah.
Because if I forget, my sphincters lock up so tight, I forget, and then I have to actually physically push on my bladder and get the pee out. I'm sure it's really bad for me, guys, I don't fucking care, it's really convenient.
Yeah, well, so these are real and they're reflexes, and it happens when we're scared, when we feel under threat. It's kind of like a fight or flight response. So the idea with like the home birth or just wanting to propagate a natural birth, even in a hospital environment, is like everything you can do to keep the space feeling safe and calm to the woman's nervous system. And this doesn't just mean like physical safety, like, oh, we're in a hospital, there's doctors. It means like what is signaling to your subconscious, to like your amygdala, that like you're in like a safe, comfortable space. Like, think about animals going into like a cave to birth their
Yeah,
babies, right? Or like hiding, like yeah, cats would, like, hide away under the porch and, like, give birth or something because you wanna be, like, dark, enclosed, safe. You don't wanna feel like you're, like, exposed to the world and people are coming in and out and blah, 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 blah. Like, you want it to feel, um yeah, that those are just the feelings. So for me, I knew I would be able to create so much more of that at home, but people do create it in the hospital environment all the time by bringing, like, those little pretend like the, electrical
Oh, you can't
candles.
yeah, that's right, you probably can't fire at the
You can't have
hospital.
real fire, but you can bring those, like, blinky candles and, like,
We
you
had
can
those at
bring,
my
like, a
sorority.
speaker with vibey music, and, like, you can bring things and then try to communicate your desires to the health team and be like, "Hey, we don't want people coming in and turning on all the lights. We don't want" because here are some of the things that they do in the hospital setting if you're not aware, if you don't ask and, like, really advocate for yourself to not do those things, they will do checks of your cervix every hour or more. Every single time you're checked, okay, think about when you go into the gynecologist, right? And they're like, "Okay, we're gonna do your pap smear." And, like, you know how, like, uncomfortable it is?
Yeah,
They,
I
like, go
know.
in with the
Your cervix
cold.
is actually very far up.
No, yeah, but, like, they
Oh,
go
wait,
in
yes,
with
yours would be farther down because
yeah,
they
well,
just stick their
hopefully it's
fingers up there, like,
they stick their fingers up and check, but, like, think about if, like okay, for me, it was like, "Okay, I'm gonna lay down on my bed, and my nice midwife, who I have a relationship with, is, like, in the privacy of my own home, gonna, like, nicely check me." I got checked, once no, sorry, twice with my first daughter. Once at the very beginning of labor, I was 1 centimeter, and then once at the end, I was 10 centimeters. With my second daughter, I never got checked. Why check? I'm going through labor. There's nothing to check. Like, it doesn't matter. She's coming. There's no,
yeah.
checking doesn't like, okay, you could be 3 centimeters, and then next hour you could be 5, or you could be 8. Like, it doesn't really we don't need to know, but in the hospital, they have, like, these certain protocols they follow, and if here's the thing, they check you every hour, and if you haven't progressed a centimeter every hour, then they wanna give you Pitocin to help you
Yeah.
along, and, like, things that but it's like even the act of checking is causing your sphincter to go so you could even be and this is like Ina May Gaskin's whole thing, is like she had like, at least anecdotal stories of this, but like a woman could be progressing, could be like maybe they have gotten to 3, 4 centimeters, whatever, and then guess what? The doctor comes in loud, turns on the lights, "Okay, time to check you,
Yeah,
sticks his
yeah.
fingers up you," and you could back down. So it's like we're not letting the process happen naturally when we're, like, checking on it and, like, interfering and like, we have to just let these women, like, surrender and, like, keep them safe and let the process unfold through them is what I believe,
Yeah.
as much as possible.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's, like, a lost art to it, because, like, for instance, for your home birth, and then I have a friend who was in my sorority, I think her mom did home births too, who was your doula for your first baby.
Celine was my
Yeah.
doula. Yeah, her mom's awesome.
Yeah, and I think, like, she was at her sister's birth too, and I think she has pictures of it, like, not of the birth, but, like, her there. She might have pictures of her mom's home birth, but anyways, I think it's it's cool because that used to happen a long time ago, and everybody would know what birth is, would have ideally, like, kind of known what to do and what it's gonna look like, and I think now, especially in the Western world, even just, like, the idea of, like, motherhood, I think is so separate from everybody else's lives where instead of just, like, bringing other women on or bringing the kids on to see, like, this is what happens, this is how we do it, we've lost that, like, tribal knowledge of what birth is like, and maybe that was just, like, one of the results of bringing it into the hospital where you can't, like, bring your whole family, not that you want your whole family there, but bring anyone there to witness birth, to be there with you, to be your support system, and all of that knowledge that's, like, compounded over years gets lost. I mean, it's different, and I'm not trying to say that people shouldn't go to the hospital. I actually don't fucking care what any of you guys do, to be honest, because I do agree with you that, like, any place where people feel safe is where they should go. But I think a lot of the fear comes from only seeing birth in the movies where they dramatize it, whereas, like, when I saw it, I was like, "Oh," that's what I meant by, like, it didn't look that hard, is like, "Oh, it wasn't scary at all." The scariest part, which was the best part, and I still have regrets about it to this
I
day, I
know
think you
what
know what
you're
I'm gonna
gonna
say.
say.
Okay, the placenta, first of all, it was just in a bowl because. OJ was, like, connected to Grace, and they were just, like, in the bed, and it's, like, this umbilical cord to the placenta in a bowl. My biggest regret is that I didn't touch it. Like, I just wish I did, and then it looks like a 1980s movie where an alien is birthed out of a sack. It looks like the sack that the alien comes in.
Yeah, it's really crazy, actually.
Yeah, and I missed my second chance, like, I picked up Hannah's from the hospital, but it was double bagged in a bag, and they made me sign papers that I wouldn't eat it.
Well, yeah, they probably were like, "We know you, Reyna, don't touch it.
Do you want
Don't."
people to eat it? Why are letting people leave with it? You know what they're doing.
That's really funny. Yeah, and, I think also there's a lot of right now, a lot of, like, people sharing their traumatizing birth stories and not as many people sharing their, like, not, like, successful, but, like, untraumatizing birth stories, and so sometimes I do like to talk about, like, my experiences, and not because I think that everybody should do exactly what I did or that they have to do a home birth or that they even have to do a natural birth, but I think I also want to be a voice to tell women, like, we can do this. Like, your body has so much wisdom. And honestly, my births were some of the most like empowering experiences of my life. Like, I felt so like, I mean, it's just wild, but I felt, yeah, I don't know what else to say, but like empowered, like a warrior woman goddess or something to get to birth your baby? I don't know, and I think we're taking that away from women, and I'm not saying that like, I do think there are cases where there are emergencies and there are risks and things that I understand people should always do what's best for them and their baby, but I just hope that some women can be exposed to some more positive stories of, like, things happening naturally and there being no problem. My doctor laughed, so my midwives had to, like, write these, like okay, so my midwives were the first ones to check on my daughters, like, the midwives would come back and do these visits with me, and they did the first couple pediatric visits with my
Yeah.
daughters before we went into, like, the regular pediatrician, so they would, like, weigh them and take their, like, stats and whatever. So when I went into the regular pediatrician, she was laughing because on the sheet that I got from my midwife to bring to her, it was like details about the birth, and then my midwife was like, "It was, um, a regular, uncomplicated, natural birth." And then she was just like, "Uncomplicated. Wow." Like, it was like she had never heard anyone use that term, and it's like, well, shouldn't it be, like, at least, I don't know, the majority of the time? Like,
Well, I will say this, I remember learning this from class because it was really informative. Humans do have dangerous births compared to other animals because we walk upright and because we have big brains.
our heads are
Because we
so
have
big.
walk uprights, we have narrower hips. And then because we have big brains, our heads are bigger. And our heads are so big and our hips are so narrow that the babies have to be born raw, basically. They're uncooked. And like the heads are so big that they like just
The
fit the
heads
birth canal.
the heads, are
Yeah.
flexible,
Yeah.
they can smush.
And they say that you have to the only way to get it through is to, like, be rotating at the same time as you're giving birth, and that there are higher mortality rates for human births than other animals because of that. Obviously, we have modern medicine, yada, 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 and I think, if I remember correctly, it's something like 15%, which is a lot like, back in the day, natural, completely natural cave days. Um, which is a lot. Not to say that to scare you, because I also think that women can do it, and when I was talking to Grace when we were prepping for this, I wanted to make a distinction, like, we are talking about home births in 2025 versus hospital births in 2025. Just like modern medicine has come a long way from those fucking scary ass man doctors, cutting women open, home birthing also has taken leaps and bounds in the last 100 years too, so um, I think it's really cool when anyone takes control of their lives and, is an active participant in what happens to them, and I think a lot of times when we're making medical decisions, we always feel like these decisions are put on us and that we aren't participating in it. And we have to almost go, but something I really wanna make sure that we cover before we do is, like, we already kinda talked about, like, how someone should decide if home birth is right for them, and we decided go wherever you're comfortable. But home birth is not the only option, like, to take advantage of. Like, can you talk about a little bit about some of the things you did? Because you did a really good job of this. Um, like, when you didn't know if you were gonna do home birth and, like, everything you thought about and considered and added and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot you can do to be, like Raina said, an active participant in your birth, an educated birther, which, you know,
Birther.
starts to
What if
do
they called people who hated
birthing
Obama
person.
illegitimate people?
What?
Because they said he was born and they were like, "Show me your birth certificates." Remember?
No, I was thinking more of like there are funny terms. Sometimes they'll be like the birther and the birthing partner because they don't
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
say
yeah,
like
yeah.
the
No, I
mom
know what
and
you mean,
dad
but
because
I
like
yeah.
whatever. But you can. I would highly recommend. Well, Ina May Gaskin's book. Whether no matter where you're giving birth, just learning a little bit about. She has a couple books actually, but any
Yeah,
of them
what's
are
this one
good.
called? I
This
forget.
one's, The Guide to Childbirth is a good one because she teaches on the process of childbirth, and they have those birth stories, which again are really, I think, like mind opening.
Yeah, just ignore
Um,
all that weird shit, guys, but it's cool.
the reason that all the women are on the farm was because this is the farm where so basically she brought back okay, Raina shared that midwifery has been like almost wiped out as birthing was taken into the hospital, which is really sad because this is an
Yeah.
art that's been passed down through generations of women for like thousands of years. And her crew on this farm in like Tennessee or
Yeah, they're in
something,
Tennessee, I remember
they
that.
were like the last midwives and they kind of like revived midwifery by like cultivating knowledge at this farm, and women would go there to birth there, and then they like learned a lot through it, and then they have very much been spreading back the knowledge of midwifery. So now like she's a source that um can spread the knowledge to other places so you don't just have to go to that farm, but she's like reviving
Yeah.
the midwifery, right? But, The Guide to Childbirth is a good book. I think I would recommend to anybody just to, like, understand more of the process in a really easy to understand way, doing any birth class that you like, that you feel comfortable with. I did hypnobirthing, which is very on brand for me. It's kind of woo, but it's really just about the fact that, like, we can get ourselves in a mental state, like, mental, emotional, spiritual state where we can, like, move through this process naturally. I'm, a Reiki lady, an energy healer, so I was like, "Yes, I'm going to like, this is so on brand, guided meditations and, like, audios to listen to and whatever to get me into this state where I can move through this unmedicated," and I was able to, partly because of that and partly too because of other things, but there's a lot of different classes, and I think, like, taking any class where you learn about,
Yeah.
like, how you can labor, how you can, support yourself during labor, then you're not gonna be so afraid, you're not just gonna be like, "Give me the drugs," or like, "I don't know what's going on," like, you can just, like, feel like you have a little bit of confidence. There's, of course, we Raina mentioned earlier, but doulas, I think, are kinda taking the role of what used to be that community care,
Yeah.
like, your
Doulas are
aunt would
the
just
good
be
one.
like yeah, like, I mean,
They're cool.
before it used to mean that, like, then your like, other women in the family that could help you and whatever, but now that is a role that you hire somebody who is trained as a doula, and they're there to help you learn, to help support you and your partner and help your partner support you. So they're just kind of like, um, if you go into a hospital, they're your advocate. So you kind of make a birth plan ahead of time and they're going to help advocate for that. If you're doing it at home, they're going to like help you labor at home before your midwife gets there. So, like, that's a cool thing if you can afford it. Um, I don't know. They're usually like a couple $1,000s.
Yeah.
So not everybody can, but there are birth classes online, like at very reasonable price points. I mean, you can just buy like an online course on
Yeah.
birth and labor, so that should be accessible to anybody. Um, and I would
Midwives.
oh, midwives for sure, like
Like, even in
midwives.
the hospital.
Yes, you could find look up in hospitals around you if there's a midwife clinic, a midwife practice in one of the hospitals. If you don't wanna do the home birth kind, you can look for that, and they're a little bit more trained, like, they're trained on natural ways to deal with certain things, like, I'll just tell one story that I was noticing, like, a comment battle about home birth recently because somebody had a home birth. They're like, "This is awesome." And then somebody else, of course, is like, "Well, what about the emergency? Like, my baby had shoulder dysplasia, and we would have died if I wasn't in the hospital." And then she, like, politely was like, "Actually, midwives know how to handle shoulder dysplasia, but yeah, I'm really glad that you were, like, safe and everything." And, like, midwives do know a lot
Yeah.
more than we give them credit for. They know how to like, shoulder dysplasia is when, like, the shoulder's stuck and, like, they know how to manhandle the baby around to, like, unstuck it. Nuchal cord, when the cord is wrapped around the neck. I remember my mom was really worried about me, doing the home birth because she had had a C-section for her last daughter, for my younger sister.
Mhm.
Her last birth was twins. The first she did naturally, and then the second, they had to do an emergency C-section, in quotes, "emergency C-section." They said, "The second one, they have the umbilical cord wrapped around the neck. We gotta, like, put you into a C-section." Um, my midwives later told me when I let them know this story, they're like, "We deliver nuchal babies. That's totally fine. You they wrap your finger under the cord and you loop it around their head."
Yeah,
Now
no, I said what I said.
it could be if you had a really short umbilical cord
Yeah.
that you couldn't do that, but that's really like, we're these things are, like, less and less and less and less likely, but there are tiny, tiny chances. So,
Of
yeah,
course.
it's
I mean,
risk
there's
tolerance.
I childbirth is not in general has risks to it. So,
Yeah, but at
um,
least a midwife, they could try these things, and
yeah.
then if it's not working, they pivot you over to the surgery room that's, in the other
Yeah.
building or down the hall or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's just important, like, there are levels to this, and home birth is at one end, and hospital birth with all the drugs and whatever is at the other end, and, like, you're free to pick any journey in the middle. So I think it's cool to just, like, remind people that, like, "Hey, these are the options that you have," to
Yeah.
create, like, a situation where you feel like, I don't know, whatever you're
I just
supposed to
want
feel.
women to feel empowered, and it's
Yeah.
like it's also not about look, there's also always an element of, like, at the end of the day, you have to surrender to the situation. I know women
Yeah.
that have been really wanting a home birth, and then things don't go that way, and they do have to transfer to the hospital, and, like, there's also this element of just releasing your
Yeah.
expectations, so I think it's a matter of, like, educating yourself, like, figuring out what you do want, advocating for that, and then also at the end of the day, of course, you're just gonna do whatever's needed for you and the baby to be healthy, and that's what it's all about, but
Yeah.
I don't think we would have as much birth trauma as I'm seeing if we were doing more of these upstream
Yeah,
steps.
we have, like, a generational probably, like, for a few generations of birth trauma, I think.
Yeah,
I mean, who
yeah.
knows?
So if you guys oh, last thing I'll say is that ask women to like, real women that you know to tell their birth stories, and maybe ones what?
And AI women. What do you mean real women? Ask the women you know, not
I
us, the
meant
fake women
the
or the AI women.
I was actually talking about because we also mentioned the hippy dippy women in the Ina May book,
Oh, you
but,
meant just
like, just women you know that have just given birth, especially women
not
that
the
might have had a positive experience because
yeah.
it can really go a long way to, like, empowering you. Um, if anybody wants me to tell you my full story, I will. So, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, we will. Let us know if you wanna hear Grace's whole full story, which I thought she was gonna tell today, to be honest. I was trying to get her to, but she didn't get my hint. Um,
I feel like it's too long.
yeah,
I didn't wanna make it all about, like,
I
me, I
know,
just
and
wanna talk
she's
about it.
once again gonna be late to pick up her kid, so I don't even think we can do a segment at the end. I think we just gotta to cut it here because she's gotta go. Her
You
kids are gonna
just
be
wanna
sad and
get out of
crying. They're like,
the
"My mom's late again."
end segment. You're always trying to get out of it. Okay, fine.
Well,
You're
I don't
out
know,
of
do you
it.
have time? They're your kids.
I gotta leave in 1 minute. What can we give them in 1 minute?
Did you guys see that, New York Times article about, ruining women ruining the workforce? That's the only thing I have. I saw it today, so now you guys know what day it is, and, I felt like they're ruining our I think we need to copyright our name.
Yeah, well, let's just say we're in the zeitgeist, and I think this is a good sign. I think they understand that we're on the rise.
Yeah, we're
I think it
ruining
was a
everything.
sign. We are ruining everything. Next time it's gonna be like, "New York Times, did Grace and Reyna ruin the workplace?
Grace and
Did
Rena
Grace and
ruined
Reyna
podcasting.
ruin podcasting?" Okay, we'll cut it there, kiddios.
That's
Oh,
all
and
you
let
get.
us know. Reina thinks we should do questions
Yeah.
where you guys can submit questions you want us to answer. So
Wait,
I
no, they should
might.
submit questions they wanna know when we have the doctor on.
Oh, okay. If you guys want us to do a follow-up with a real doctor, a human
Human
doctor,
doctor.
if you do, let us know. And if you have questions specifically for them, let us know and we'll arrange it. I
Yeah.
promise. We got you.
And if you don't, we're gonna make up our own questions. You guys have to listen to it anyway, so
Still do it anyway.
yeah,
So,
whatever. It's our podcast. Fuck outta here. All right, bye.
bye.